Look at my sweet shirt.
Hello, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on the Pacific West Coast. It is 7 o'clock Mountain Time. No, 6 o'clock Mountain. No, 6. What am I? It's 5 o'clock here. Oh, let me get this right. It's
Calm down.
5 o'clock in the Pacific. It is 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Central Time, and 8 o'clock on the East Coast. And it is time for Train with the Coaches. And I'm Coach Jeff.
I'm Coach Sherry Ann.
And welcome to tonight's show. This is where we talk everything training, runners, triathletes, ultra running, nutrition, anything you would like to know, we like to talk about. So if you're out there, if you're watching the show, if you're in the chat room, please feel free just to ask a question in the question and answer session over here. You can ask questions, and we'll read them, and we'll get back to you and do everything we can to get the right answer. Sherry Ann, how are you?
I am fantastic. It's been a good Thursday here in Arizona, so I have nothing to complain about.
What was so good about your Thursday in Arizona?
Oh, I love half days for school. There's a lot of parents that don't like half days, but I do because I get to hang out with my kids. So that's why it's just the afternoon always is fun-filled and energetic. So that's why it's always a good day.
That's nice. So, and anything else going on? Is there anything else we need to talk about before we get on with the show? Anything new? We're about to release our new PSA for Zero, the end of prostate cancer, with Neil, is it Napier?
Yes.
Is that how we say his name? Napier?
That's why.
From the Sci-Fi Network show Helix. He did a PSA for the Patagonia team to help raise funds for Zero, the end of prostate cancer. Anyone who's listening to the show who would like to donate to Zero, I believe, do you have can you put up is it possible to go in the chat room and put up a link in there? I don't know. Maybe we can figure that out during the show. You can put up our link. If anyone wants to go in and donate to Zero, it would be greatly appreciated. So that's kind of new and exciting. We'll be releasing that PSA sometime in the very near future.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't have anything new. That's it. Show's over.
Yeah. That's it. Nothing new.
Yeah. So anyway, tonight we thought we would go back into our effort-based training series and talk a little bit more about the things that people should be looking for. We always talk about effort-based training, and we talk about effort-based training and heart rate-based training and the different phases of it, but we never really talk about, what you should be doing and what you should be looking for in each phase of your training, and what results you should be looking for, if any results, and the kind of things you should be focusing on. And that's what tonight's show is going to be about. We're going to talk about focusing, where that focus should be in what we like to call PRS Fit, the base one phase of training, right?
Base one is where it's at.
Base one is where it's at. It's kind of it intrigues me all the time because I talk about this all the time. Base. It's all about the base. I hate that song, by the way, but when it comes right down to it, for us, it's all about the base, and that's what makes you a better endurance athlete. And we like to make our base one phase of training a 4 to 6 week period of training, that depending on who you are as an athlete, where you've been, what you've done, where you are at conditioning wise, and the things that you should be looking for in that base one phase of training, because that's the part of the training process where it's not just about the training. It's about finding out who you are as an athlete, understanding how your body feels, dialing in your nutrition, all the things that are very, very important that happen later on in the training start in the very beginning. And those are the things that you should be dialing in and looking for as you're going through these first 4 to 6 weeks. And the first thing we always talk about is the aerobic conditioning and the value that you get from aerobic conditioning, and what we mean by some of the terms that we talk about during the aerobic. You always hear me talk about mitochondria. And what exactly are mitochondria? Simply put, mitochondria generate the energy that our cells need to do their job. And muscle fibers take a lot of energy. So the more mitochondria you have, the more energy you have at the cellular level. Just makes sense. And the more energy you have at the cellular level, the better your ability to run for longer periods of time. You hear me mention capillaries all the time. And what exactly are capillaries? Capillaries are the smallest veins in your body. And those small veins play such an intricate role, especially for endurance athletes. So when you increase your capillaries, what they do is capillaries enable the exchange of water and oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. So the more capillaries you have, the more ability you have to exchange water and oxygen throughout your muscles. And again, so we're talking about increasing your ability as an athlete at the cellular level, at the very base of who you are as a person. And that's why I talk about those things all the time. And that's two of the things that happen in this first 4 to 6 weeks, or actually begin the happening of that in the first 4 to 6 weeks. Right, pal?
So, okay, so I'm going to ask a question that I think that some people might have, because I'm going to help facilitate the questions. So why does it have to be aerobic? Like, can you develop the same amount of mitochondria and capillaries working at a higher zone, or do you have to stay zone 1, zone 2?
No, you do not. And that's a good question. I wish I knew the medical answer for it. I just know or the medical reason for it. I just know that I was taught this answer to it. We develop, and you know what? I'll look into the reason for that. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to find out the reason why we don't. But you only develop about 25% of the mitochondria at anaerobic levels that you do at aerobic levels. Mm-hmm. So do you still develop mitochondria and your capillaries at an anaerobic level? Yes, but at a much lesser degree than you do at the aerobic level. And even at the aerobic level, after you get to a certain point, the amount of mitochondria that you start to generate decreases a little bit once you reach a certain level of fitness. But you do develop less at higher intensity efforts than you do at lower intensity efforts. And I will find out the medical reason for that. That's that reason for that. I'm writing that down as a note because probably something.
You just said another thing that kind of created another question then. So can people cap out? Can they kind of top out with creating that base?
Yeah, you can. You can develop your aerobic base or your endurance base can get bigger for about the average person for about 10 years. So for about 10 years, you can increase your aerobic and your endurance levels. And then after that, you pretty much are going to be tapped out.
Okay. You're the best that you're going to be.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're going to be as fast as you're going to be, but your endurance levels, your aerobic levels aren't going to increase at all. Now, does that mean you can't get faster? I would think so, because that's where every year you're stacking the VO2 max on top of that aerobic engine. So I don't know, after 10 years, if I was 18 years old, would I have been tapped out by the time I was 28? I doubt that. I mean, speed-wise, but I certainly think there's some kind of give and return effect there. Mm-hmm. But those are good questions. So what else happens in these first 4 to 6 weeks? We're increasing our mitochondria. We're increasing our capillaries. And you're also going to strengthen your slow twitch fibers. Now, your slow twitch fibers are the fibers that carry you longer to fatigue. And your slow twitch fibers will be enacted, on any aerobic-based run that you're doing. But new medical research is now showing us that as you get fatigued towards the end of a long run or a long aerobic-based run, that your body actually starts to go into a glycogen burning mode, and you start to incorporate some fast twitch fibers. So now we're discovering that on these long aerobic runs, yes, you're strengthening the slow twitch fibers about 98% of the time, but at that small percentage of the time at the end of the run, you're actually now enhancing your fast twitch fibers as well. Am I just like a plethora of new scientific information or what?
You just taught me something new.
Yeah. See? See, everyone can learn on this show. That's a great thing about it. Everyone can turn in and tune in and learn a little bit. Yeah, so that's just something that medical research has started to discover over the last couple of years. So, and of course the other key ingredient, and these are like the non-noticeable things, like the things that you really have no control over during the base phase of your training. I mean, your aerobic conditioning is going to increase. Your cardiovascular strength is going to increase. You're going to increase the number of mitochondria and capillaries. You're going to strengthen your fast twitch fibers, and you're going to develop better fat burning skills. And we all know that it's fat burning that produces longer energy, more energy, and carries you longer to fatigue as well. These are things that happen internally that you see the result of through your efforts and through your logging. That's why logging is so important. You see it's not something that, you can walk down the street and say, oh man, I feel good, I just got 100 new mitochondria. There's no way to measure that other than how you're starting to feel through the process in this first 4 to 6 weeks of training. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I really like to tell everyone when we talk about this is, at this point in your training, when I say building a base, so many people misunderstand the how to run base training workouts. Too many people are out there running too slow, and then they're blaming me. I'm running this slow because Coach Jeff and Coach Sherry Ann told me I got to run this slow. And they're really not getting the benefit that you get out of an aerobic workout. At the end of an aerobic workout, in this base building phase, you should feel pleasantly tired. And you shouldn't feel exhausted, but you should feel like you've had a workout, and a workout that you can recover from quickly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because the thing is that if you're not pleasantly tired, then were you working out hard enough? But if you're exhausted, then you're working out too hard. It's just got to be, you've got to find that happy place though too. But yeah, there's some people that think that they have to run super slow, and that's not the case.
Yeah, and this is the reason for the gadgetry. The reason for the gadgetry isn't to be looking at your watch the whole time you're running. And I have some people who are addicted to their watch, and I tell them, you know what, don't be addicted to your watch if you need to know that number, because some people are very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Anal. Some people are very, very anal. And if they have a zone 2 run, they're out there and they want to know if they should be at 148 beats or 159 beats. I say forget about that. Go out and run, get a feeling for where you're at in zone 2. Set the alarm on your watch to beep when you go out. That's when you'll know you're out of zone 2. So you don't have to look at it. All Garmin's and Polars have alarms on them. You can run, and if you're running a little too fast, it'll go beep, and you know to slow down. And then you can think about that feeling you just had at that moment. And where you're at running-wise. I'm really, 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 really trying to get people away from the face of the dial. How do you feel about that,
Well, I like to tell some of my athletes that are tied to their watch if they want to carry their watch in their water belt, or if they're wearing like a Ultimate Direction pack or something, but put the watch somewhere else so they can't see it and have access to it, but it's still logging their workout. So when they finish, they can go ahead and upload the workout, take a look at it, and really see what was going on, and then correlate it to how they felt during their workout. But yeah, I tell them to put the watch away if they want to carry it with them still, so that they can have the numbers, because they're so number driven. Fine, I have no qualms about that, but wear it backwards, or wear it somewhere where you're not going to be able to see it all the time.
Yeah, and it's funny because the numbers are really, really good to look at after a workout, because we can really sit down and have a conversation if need be, where you say, well, this is where you were, this is where you should have been, and here's the proof. Or a lot of times people will say, well, and this happens a lot in the summer when humidity comes around, I felt really, really good, but my heart rate was really, really high. And I say, well, okay, how hot was it at that point? Because you're going to get heart rate creep in the summer, and it doesn't matter how good you feel, you're going to get that heart rate creep because your body's working harder internally to cool itself down. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get that. And that's why it's so important to stay cool when you're running if you really want to get accurate training data during the summer. But you know, if you're out there during the summer and you're running and you're feeling really, really good and you're looking at the watch, you're saying, oh, I got to slow down. And I've had people saying this to me sometimes in the summer that, you know, I feel like I have to walk to stay in my zone. Well, then it's just your body's overheated. And if you're feeling good, then you should, you know, run out of your zone a little bit as long as you're not getting anaerobic. That's the key, is not to get anaerobic when you're in the base building phase. There's plenty of time for the anaerobic stuff that we'll talk about some weeks down the road, but it's aerobic. You know, stay aerobic and learn what aerobic feels like. Because 99 times out of 100, when you're running anything from the marathon distance and above, or the 70.3 distance and above, you're going to be aerobic most of the time. So you really want to understand what it feels like to be aerobic.
Yeah, and that means that you should be able to have a conversation. So if you're training with a training partner, you should be able to be having a decent conversation where you're not gasping for air trying to get your words out. And if you are having to gasp for air, then you are not in your zone. So, but
yeah. I always say if they're talking to me and I don't feel like talking back, sometimes it's not because I'm angry, it's because we're running too hard.
Yeah, but you have to, and back to what you were saying about the heat, and you have to be flexible with your heart rate in when you're taking climate into consideration. But let's get back to, I'm going to keep, you know, I'm your bumpers when we go bowling, you know, keep you on track here.
Yeah. Okay.
Not let you get go on a tangent here.
So we're in this first 4 to 6 weeks, and we're looking at the things that we should be noticing in our first phase of base building, going into our marathon or our Ironman or half Ironman training program, or any of our training programs, to say that. So what's the next thing you want to think about dialing in during this first 4 to 6 weeks? This is the time to dial in running form. This is the time to dial in, and for a lot of you, this is going to be a new term, your running economy. And those two can be tied together, but interestingly enough, they may not be tied together. However, this is the time, if you have a glitch in your form that might have caused you injuries before, if you don't think you run smooth enough, if you're a heel striker and you want to get off your heel, maybe you're too much on your toes, maybe your body position isn't right. This first 4 to 6 weeks is when you dial that in. And why is that important now? Because as your movement becomes freer and more natural, you start to see a better running economy. And do you want to talk about running economy, or do you want to?
Oh, sure. I'll share about running. How I liken running economy is to like the economy of a car. So when I'm talking to an athlete about it, I always say, you know, when you are shopping for a new car, most people look at the economy of the car. How many miles are you going to be able to go on a gallon of gas? And the same thing applies to running economy. You know, the more efficient you are with your running form, the higher your running economy, which means you're going to be using less oxygen, which means you're going to be able to go farther with the same amount of energy. So it really is about dialing in that form, but more than form, it's about getting comfortable and finding a place where you are most efficient in running, because not everyone's running gait is the same. Yes, we would like people to have perfect running form, but the reality of that is you know, it's difficult. So to find where you are most efficient is key to the success of your long-term training. So
they've studied some athletes at doing this, and running economy and running efficiency is pretty much a new term over the last couple of years. But they've done studies of athletes and past performances, and one of the interesting ones I thought was they did Alberto Salazar and Joni Benoit, you know, back in their heyday, and you know, they were both around at the same time. And when you looked at if you watch Joan Benoit run, as you know, as disheveled as she always looked, she had amazing running form. You know, she was all about high cadence, good body position, and just great running form. And Alberto Salazar, if you ever watched him run, he was all over the place. You know, his body was all over the place. There was nothing smooth at all about the way Alberto ran. But the interesting point is, Alberto's running economy and his running efficiency was higher than Jonas. And that's just because he was, you know, she might have been forcing her form a little bit. It might not have been her most natural movement, where Alberto was just letting everything flow the way it flowed, and so his body responded to that. So during this first 4 weeks or 6 weeks of base training is a time to get that feel dialed in as well. Get your form as smoothed out as it can possibly be. Get to feeling as good as you possibly can be feeling when you're running, because as Sherry Ann said, the more efficient you become as a runner, the better that economy is, the less oxygen you need per mile. And when you think of it as a car, and which is, Sherry Ann, another great analogy, you know, as you're talking, I'm saying to myself, you know, think if the spark plugs aren't firing right, you're not getting the optimum amount of gas mileage. And so your car isn't running smoothly because the car isn't running smoothly. If one tire is bald, it causes your car not to run in its natural state, and it uses more gasoline. And your body is the same way. If your body isn't in its most natural, relaxed state, then your running economy will suffer. And training plays a huge part on your running economy and your running efficiency. The better you train, the more aerobically you train, over a period of time, 6, 8, 10 weeks, your running economy will actually improve.
Mm-hmm. And I find that new athletes to the sport, whether it's running or triathlons or whatever, I feel like they go through this phase in that 4 to 6 weeks where they feel awkward, like they feel like their running form is terrible, and they go through this whole phase of like trying to figure out if they are efficient, and they realize that they're not, and then but the thing is, you know, work with, you know, your coach, us, and get your running form to the best that you can, but don't overthink it. Don't overstress about it, because then it ends up becoming such a negative, and you end up overthinking it. And all you have to do is just relax. And we give you running drills so that you can get your running form down. But I find so many athletes overthinking it and overstressing about it, and that completely negates the whole point of running economy and running efficiency.
Yeah, and I just found a new button, so that's why I'm a little distracted. You're not doing a good job keeping me off the bumpers. So I just found the chat room button. So yeah, so now as you notice, the things that we're talking about, these are all things that you probably haven't thought about before, and they're things that you get to think about in that first 4 to 6 weeks as you're developing the first part of your base and developing your training program. So moving right along, these first 4 to 6 weeks is a great time to start the cross-training process as well. Now, I believe that everyone coming into a training program should have some kind of preparation prior to coming in. You know, if someone calls me up and they say, my marathon is 6 months away, coach, what should I do? I say, well, let's spend a couple of weeks prepping you for training. You know, we're going to do some strength training. We're going to do a little bit of cross training. We're going to get everything where it should be before we start even the base building phase of training. But when you're in this base 1 phase of training, you know, strength program is intrinsic. You really want to start prepping your body in base 1 for the harder stuff that's going to come along. Because as you start to spend more time running, you're going to spend a little bit less time doing strength training, and so you need to be as strong as you possibly can be in these first 4 to 6 weeks to carry you through the program. And there are a lot of coaches out there, and I know Sherry Ann's on the same page as me with this, but there are a lot of coaches out there who don't believe in strength training. You know, Jeff Galloway specifically says in his run-walk programs, don't do any strength training for your calves. I mean, that just floors me every time I read that. One of his programs, like, what? Why would we do the calves?
Ligaments and tendons are in your calves and ankles. Like,
yeah. It just floors me that he says that. You know, most Higdon programs don't have any strength work in it. I'm a huge advocate of strength training during your entire training cycle, but especially in those first 4 to 6 weeks of base training.
Yeah, I agree, and it's what people don't realize, it's not just the muscles that we're working, it's the tendons and ligaments. It's everything that's going to support your joints. And this, once again, it goes back to the stronger that base, the easier it is to build strength and speed and everything that you want to be successful on top of that as time comes, as you go along in your training plan. So strength training is an added bonus, I think, that everybody needs to have and many overlook. But it's not just about the muscles. That's what I really emphasize with people. It's about your tendons and ligaments and really supporting the joints.
Yeah, it's funny how few runners, especially triathletes generally spend a bit more time strength training than runners do. But year before last, I was at Marine Corps Marathon, the Denver Rock and Roll, Vegas Rock and Roll, New York City Marathon. I'm trying to think where else, but I was there doing form stuff with Ultra Running at their booths at these marathons, and I cannot tell you, I looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's body alignments and body position and running form at these expos. That's what I was there to do, and I would say that 90 to 95% of the runners that I looked at all had weak hips. And because one, they're not doing any strength work, and two, they're constantly running on paved roads, and they're running straight ahead, and they're not getting any lateral movement, and so they end up having weak hip flexors, and that really affects your body over a long period of time, because most pronation, and I even hate to say the word overpronation, but most overpronation issues they start at the hip, not at your feet. These corrective shoes aren't correcting the problem, because the problem is starting in the upper part of your body, from the weaknesses in the upper part of your body in the hip area.
Yeah, it's I realized I actually really learned that from you, and it's funny because there's so many running stores that look at people's just their feet, and it's like we need to start really making people think it's not just your feet; it starts higher, and it is in your hip and down. But it's just about educating people, which we're doing.
Yeah, I have this great story. When Ultra first came out, I was traveling around the state of Colorado, going to stores and doing clinics for them, and checking out product for stores and new stores that they were opening up. And I was in one store, and almost every shoe in this guy's wall was a motion controller stability shoe. Almost every one, except for the Ultras. And he couldn't sell the Ultras because everyone he looked at was an overpronator. And so I took off my shoes, and many of you have heard the stories of my feet before, and Sherry Ann has had the pleasure of seeing my feet. I have the most deformed feet in the world when you look at them. And the guy said, I took off my shoes. I said, which shoe do you think I should be in? And man, he grabbed this monster, this behemoth, whatever it was, with this great big medial post in it, and he goes, dude, it'll support that arch. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. So I opened up my gym bag. I put my Ultras on. At the time, they only had the Instincts, so I put the Instincts on. I went over. I said, I want you to get behind me and watch me run on the treadmill. And he watched me run on the treadmill. And he was like, my God. He goes, there's no drop at all. I said, that's right. Because I don't heel strike, and I don't go through that motion, and I have strong hips, and my knees track straight, and those are all the things that you should be looking for when you get a running shoe, or when you're strengthening your body. One thing you can look at, and you can do this in a mirror. There's apps that you can actually get on your iPhone that you can take a picture of yourself. You can stand straight, and you can take a picture of yourself, and the body grids will be there, the frontal planes, the sagittal plane. They'll all be lined out, and you can see how your hips line up and how your shoulders line up and how everything lines up. And then it's a simple little squat test. That almost doesn't sound right, does it? There's a simple little squat test that you can do where you just, go into maybe a half, three-quarter squat like you're squatting with weights, keep your arms out to your side, and you'll be able to see how your knees track over your feet. And if your knees are tracking straight out over your second digit, you pretty much don't have a problem. If those knees start to go out laterally towards the third and fourth digit, you're tracking a little bit to the outside. If those knees are tracking a little bit to the medial side over the big toe, then you have a little bit of a problem there. that problem doesn't start with your feet. It starts with your hips. Generally, you strengthen those hips out and you strengthen the tracking process of your knees over your feet. So most people, if they run properly, don't need corrective devices in their shoes, and they don't need corrective shoes. But that's way off the topic, isn't it? You're supposed to be my bowling alley.
Well, no, we're talking about strength training, and so I know I was supposed to be your bumpers, but it all comes back to, the reason why we do strength training is because so many people overlook it, and then they end up with feet and knee problems, and it's like, well, we need to get, back to doing good strength training, having good technique, and that will help prevent injuries. I mean, a lot of the reason we do strength training is to help, not necessarily prevent, but it is to prevent the possibility of injuries. So
yeah, it reduces the chance. Everything you can do. Look, this isn't endurance sports are body wearing sports. There's no doubt about that. And you're going to get an injury. Maybe I've been pretty fortunate in my life, but I have an injury right now. It's not from running. I did it walking the dogs, but it's endurance sports. You're out there pounding all the time. Things are going to happen. So what you can do to stop those things from happening is preparation. And the more preparation you do and the more proper training you do, the more reduction there is in the chance of injury. And that's what you're striving for. If you're doing everything right and an injury happens, then there's nothing you can do but say, okay, injuries happen. But if you're getting injured and you're getting injured and you're getting injured and you're getting injured, then you're doing things incorrectly, and you need to take a look at what you're doing and fix that, and look at what the source of the injury is. And and this base phase is where you can start to dial that in. I tell people all the time, running doesn't cause injuries, bad form does. Dial that form in early, dial the strength in early, get your body prepared for what's to come, and that's happening all in this base phase of training, in this very first base phase of training.
Yep. So the last part, well, not necessarily the last part, but the next part of this base training kind of goes into what you were saying. If not goes into it, but the nice segue into it is you dial in your nutrition and your recovery. Because if you are having injuries, if you are having problems, this is the time to really figure out why. And it could be because you're not recovering properly, because you're not feeding yourself properly, and that people overlook that just as much as anything. And it's the recovery part of your training is just as important, if not more important, than the actual training itself. And I would say when I first joined the triathlon community and really started doing triathlons, it was hard for me to wrap my mind around the recovery part and how important that was. It was more mentally challenging for me than anything, but I realized how critical it was in order to take that recovery so that I could get stronger and let the body repair so that I could come back stronger. But that's the other part of phase one, is just learning how to dial in your nutrition and see the importance of recovery.
Yeah, and you really hit the nail on the head. And it starts day one. Mm-hmm. Nothing that infuriates me more when I get the email 2 weeks out from someone's race. They're not a client, because most of our teammates, we're working on this from day one. But someone will contact me and say, coach, I'm getting close to my race, and I want to know what I should be eating my last 2 weeks. I just go, you might as well eat Snickers. It's too late. It really doesn't matter at that point. The nutrition component and in most sports is the most overlooked component of training. And it is so important. Your nutrition is what helps you recover from a workout. And the better you recover from a workout, the better the next workout is. Mm-hmm. And so many people just don't get that. And it's your nutrition. It's not my nutrition, it's your nutrition. Yes, there are certain things that you should eat. Yes, there are certain philosophies that I believe in. But you're going to create a lifestyle that's going to be healthy and support support you in that lifestyle. And no matter what that nutrition plan is, it's your choice. But it needs to be it needs to be a balance, and hopefully it's filled with whole foods. And I think Coach Bonnie put something up the other day that I thought was pretty great. She said, if you can get it at a drive-in, you shouldn't eat it, or something like that. Or if they can hand it to you through a window, You're just eating it. I couldn't agree with that more. You know, you really need to make healthy, whole food choices, and you need to learn the process of recovering immediately after a workout. A lot of people ignore that, how important that is. Your metabolism is the highest then, so your body absorbs the nutrients the quickest then, and it's very, very important when you come in off the street or off the bike or out of the pool that you start that recovery process through your nutritional intake.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean it's food is fuel, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't enjoy their food and you shouldn't, you know, treat yourself every now and again, but when you become an athlete and you set goals, your food is your fuel, and you wouldn't put crap in your car, you know, you wouldn't pour juice or something, you know, odd in the gas tank, you know, so it's, you know, treat your body right. You got to put the right things in it because you're asking so much of it during your training. So why not give it what it needs to do what it needs to do? So it's so critical. And it is true, there's so many people that will finish a workout too, and they're not hungry for whatever reason because, you know, maybe they work super hard during the training session, or they get busy trying to get ready to get to work or take care of kids or whatever. And that time when you finish your workout is so important, what you put in your body, so that you can get up tomorrow and do your workout again. Because if you don't take care of it, what's your workout tomorrow going to be like? You know, and so it's like, don't dig yourself a hole, you know, treat yourself right. You know,
the recovery process, the nutrition process, the recovering process, and you know, you touched on it a little bit before about the rest and recovery. I had a girl call the other day who, you know, we offered a free form evaluation on one of the groups that we are part of, and I was doing one the other day, and I was talking to this young girl who, you know, actually ran very nicely. It was, you know, she, you know, just had a couple of little minor glitches that we addressed real quickly. And she's doing and I, because I beat this guy up all the time, I will continue to. She's doing a Halligan advanced marathon program. And I said, well, I'm watching her run and you know, hearing that she was doing an advanced program. I said, well, so are you're looking to run around 3:35, 3:40? She said, no, I haven't broken 4 hours yet. And I said, and you're running 6 days a week? She said, yeah, and she happens to be a medical student. And I'm just sitting there cringing the whole time. I'm absolutely beside myself, and I'm, you know, and I don't want to tell. I said, look, I said, here's what I'm going to tell you to do it, and because it's way too late to be messing up your program or whatever you're doing. I mean, she's like 11 or 12 weeks out from the race and already running 20 milers on this crazy program, and like running a 20 miler and then the next day doing a 6 mile recovery run. And I said, you know, look, you need to take that 6th day of running out of there at least. I said, if I was training you, I would take the 5th day of running out of there too, because at your level, you don't need to be running, you know, 5 or 6 days a week. I have guys running 250 marathons to run 4 days a week. Yeah. You know, you don't need all that extra work. I said, but do yourself a favor. I said, on those days that you're supposed to do easy runs to recover, I said, get on a bike. I said, do something else. I said, don't run. Get on the elliptical. Do anything to get the pounding, because you're just beating your body up too badly, and you're going to get hurt. And, you know, the recipe for this program is you're going to get hurt. You know, running 5 days in a row, you know, even 4 days in a row, you know, for the average age grouper who is after their workout is out walking around all day and doing life stuff, it's just way too much. It's way too much for the body to handle, and it breaks. And that's one of those things that irritates me about these training programs is, you know, I don't know who they're designed for, but they're not designed for the average age grouper. And there's certainly an advanced marathon program with 6 days of running with a 17 miler followed up with a 6 mile recovery run, you know, certainly isn't designed for the 4 hour marathon. You know, if you're Meb, you know, if you're a Kenyan, you know, if you're a Karagoucher, you know, you can run in the morning, sleep in the afternoon. You know, if you have that kind of lifestyle, okay. But, you know, when you're out there doing the rest of the stuff, it's just way too much work. And recovery is so important, because if your body gets in that catabolic state and it never gets anabolic or in the recovery phase, you never get any improvement. and you just keep beating it up, and it just keeps staying catabolic and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping until the injury comes and the overtraining fatigue comes and the crankies come and all the things that come along with your body breaking down.
Yeah, which isn't fun for anybody. Because
Yeah.
then you can't win.
No, and you know, a lot of times, and it's funny because I hear it a lot of times, and you know, I really try as much as I possibly can in the pages that I'm on to stay out of any controversy and judge anyone's training program that they're doing with somebody else. But I almost know that every time someone says to me, I'm fatigued, I'm not motivated, I can't do this, I can't do these things, I'm cranky, I'm irritable, I right away say, you know what, you're overtraining.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the first thought that goes through my mind. You're overtraining. You know, we have a gal on our team, you know, who hasn't done much in the last couple of months. And, you know, she's had 3 brutal years of racing and preparation and coming into it. And, you know, right now having a lack of motivation. And it's just because those 3 years were hard work. And it achieved a lot of goals. But now, you know, the body is saying and the mind is saying, I'm overworked and I'm done and I need some time off. And so she's taking some time off, and it's well-deserved time off. But to do that on a regular basis, training for something is just absolutely crazy. And if you are losing a couple of the signs of overtraining are fatigue, elevated heart rate. You have moodiness, you know, hunger. There's a lot. Constantly tired. You know, those are all overtraining syndromes, and you need to really take a look at your program. If you're laying there in bed in the morning and you don't feel like getting up to go out or do anything, you need to take a look at your training program. Mm-hmm. You know, unless you suffer from, you know, a chemical imbalance, and you know, Lord knows some people do suffer from a chemical imbalance. I always have to be politically correct. There are some people out there who have issues, and that's understandable. But a lot of people that are doing it, who are athletes and going through it, it's an overtraining issue. You need to really evaluate your recovery periods and your nutrition at that point. That would be always my first recommendation when someone says I'm whooped. And I say take a look at your training program and see what's going on.
There's so many athletes that get to that point and they can't find the drive to do their workouts because they are so exhausted and cranky and whatever, and they think it's them in the sense of they're just not a strong enough athlete, and that's not the case. It's okay to take a step back, reevaluate, and go, you know what, I'm exhausted. I need to redo some things here and actually focus on some recovery, because it's not about suffering all the time.
And I think if you're using a store-bought program, if you're using a program that you're downloading from somewhere, you know, one of the things you need to think about, and a lot of these programs don't say it, and my guess is that Uncle Hal's doesn't, and maybe the Runner's World thingy that they use doesn't either, but, you know, what's an advanced marathoner? If you're looking at an advanced marathon training program, are you an advanced marathoner? And just because you've run 3 marathons doesn't mean you're an advanced marathoner. Because when I design an advanced marathon training program, I'm designing it for that person who's, you know, running sub 3:30, around 3:15, maybe sub 3 hours. I mean, that's what I'm looking at when I'm designing an advanced marathon plan, because that's the kind of work that goes into an advanced marathon plan. You know, if someone says to me, I'm running a 4:05 marathon and I want to break 4 hours, I say, well, how much do you want to break 4 hours by? And they say, look, I just want to run 3:59. Then, you know, they're going to get maybe just a little bit more strenuous than a beginner marathon program, because I can pretty much, you know, ascertain if someone is running that time what they're not doing correctly. I can put them into a very, very easy training program, and if they have the ability and the adaptation, they'll get what they're looking for. They'll get the improvements they're looking for. You know, with an intermediate plan, I'm generally looking, my intermediate plans are designed for those people between 3:45 and 3:30. You know, that's the number. And most coaches, when they design a training plan, if they label it beginner advanced, beginner intermediate, or advanced, they're looking at the end result of what that plan is designed for. So to go into a system or to go buy a plan and say, well, I've run 5 marathons, I'm going to get the advanced plan. Well, if you're a 4 hour and 30-minute marathoner, don't do that, because you're not who that advanced training plan is designed for. And if that is designed for someone who is looking to run in the threes somewhere, so it's in the low threes, and because that's just the way most of us think.
Yeah, advanced doesn't mean veteran.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's a great analogy. Advanced doesn't mean veteran. It means you're out there to do, to perform in that fast Boston group. And I don't like to say elite or anything, but time wise, it's that's what you should be looking at. Okay, and when you buy a customized training program from us, we say to you, what's your marathon goal? And you tell us your goal, and then you get a plan that's designed to get you to that number. And most pre-built plans are built that way to get people to a number. So be very, very careful when you're out there. And like Sherry Ann said, advanced, it's not about how many you've done or experience level, it's about the pace that you're going to run.
Yeah. Yep.
So
recap base 1. So it's 4 to 6 weeks, right?
Right.
It's about building up the aerobic conditioning,
yep.
Building up your vascular strength, dialing in your form and your running economy, doing some cross training and developing some nice muscular strength to support your body, and dialing in that nutrition and recovery, right? Those 4 things. We hit it?
I'm with you. You hit them all.
Do we have any questions from the gallery?
I don't see any.
I'm thinking of questions, because sometimes some people I have found don't know what to ask.
Mm-hmm.
They have questions, but they don't know how to ask them. I think some of the questions that might come up in some people's head is, how do they know if their form is good or bad? Like, how do they even know where to start? I've had runners that kind of come to me and go, I think my form's good, or I'll ask them, what's your running form like? And they're like, I don't know. What would you say to that question? How do I know if my form is good?
Well, that's a great question. I have a different answer, and you probably have the same answer that I have than most coaches will have, and my answer is send me a video,
mm-hmm.
and I'll take a look. Because in all honesty, about the only way you can take a video of yourself. I mean, I have videos out there that you can watch, and there's running form videos out there that you can download on YouTube or look at on YouTube that are done by Mark Calcavecchia. Is one of the masters of running form, and he's a beautiful runner to watch run. He has videos out there, and there's a lot of guys out there and gals out there who have running form videos. Take a video of yourself, watch the video, and then go on YouTube and see if you look like any of what we're teaching. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, but the whole problem I have with that is so many people are doing so many things right. There might only be 1 or 2 things that subtle adjustments, like this girl I looked at on Sunday. She's doing so many things right. I mean, when I looked at her body economy was great. Everything she was doing was right. She just, needed a little bit more forward lean to get a little bit more forward motion out of her run. It was basically the only thing we looked at changing. And, I just really had her listen to her feet
mm-hmm.
for a while. And your feet will tell you the story of what's going on with your run. If you're hearing a slapping sound, that's your form is off. Your feet are coming down. If you're hearing heavy sounds coming out of your feet, your form is off. You should most times be hearing a light tap as you go across the ground. If you're running on gravel and you hear a scraping sound, that means you're dragging your foot. Listen to your feet, because the sound of your feet will tell you the story of what's going on with you when you run. I think that is the biggest key. Mm-hmm. If you can't hear them and you can't see them, there's a pretty good chance that you're running right. And that's the advice that I give everyone. Listen to your feet. Listen to them on the treadmill. Listen to them on the thing. The less sound you hear from your feet, the less impact there is, the better your form is.
Yep. And we're talking a lot about running, but, a lot of this still applies to triathletes. And, what I tell triathletes is that it really does come down to the run. So you really do want to dial in your running. But running economy can also spread across the board for a triathlete, in that the more efficient you are in the water, the less energy you're expending in the water, which is going to save you for the bike. And the more efficient you are on your bike, it's all a cascading effect. The more so your economy on your bike is going to play a huge role in you getting to the run and being successful on your run. So running economy is also, it can, you have to think about everything when you're a triathlete, and that it starts from the moment you put your foot in the water and being efficient, just being an efficient athlete, not just necessarily an efficient runner, because it's going to have a cascading effect as a triathlete. But
yeah, I think that's a great point, because when I talk about base one focus, I'm talking about base one focus across the board for runners and triathletes as well, because this is where the foundation is all laid, and it doesn't matter what the sport is. You're so right, and I often tell this to triathletes who are working so hard to get faster in the water, faster in the water, faster in the water. I say, my first thing is get more efficient in the water. Those couple of seconds or minute you're going to lose in the water, you'll make up. You'll make up on the bike and the run if you get out of that water fresh. I can't tell how many times I see people get out of the water and they're wavering all over the place, and they beat themselves up, and they've already lost their race because of all the energy that they expended in the water. Be an efficient swimmer. You don't have to be a fast swimmer. Be an efficient swimmer. That's the most important thing, because if you get out of that water, if you've conserved the energy, if your swim economy was good, when you're going to have a lot more left for that bike and the run later on down the road. But all these principles apply to swimming, biking, and running. When it comes to base training, there really is no different. I put people, my triathletes, I train like runners, base, base, base. It's all about the base, and no matter what you do, no matter what you say. And great examples, we go back to the Iron Wars with Alan and Scott. Scott was one of the few athletes that I've ever known who could train hard every day. That's what he did. He was just a monster. He went out and trained like an animal every day. And so many of them were doing that at the time because they all wanted to be like Dave Scott. And Mark Allen just couldn't hang with Dave Scott because he didn't have Dave's strength. When they got to that 20 or 21 mile point, Dave would always drop him. And so Mark, took a step back and said, what can I do to change this? And he learned how to train easy. He learned how to be more economical. He learned how to use his body's resources better, came back the next year and handed Dave Scott his first loss. And it proved the point. And I think conversely, when you look at those two, Dave retired shortly after that for about 5 years, and then he came back at 41 years old, came in second place, and went faster than he ever did in any of his winning races because he learned how to train easier. And so it applies across the board. Base training, focus training, developing your aerobic system applies to any athlete at any endurance sport that they're doing. And that's from 800 meters up to 8,000 miles. It just applies to everyone.
It does.
Efficiency and economy and cardiovascular condition.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because it seemed as though we were kind of focused on runners, and I'm like, no, I wanted to make sure I brought up that it is for triathletes, and it's in the swimming. It's huge in the swimming that if you are not an efficient swimmer, it's amazing the amount of energy that you lose in the water, because water is so much more dense than air, and it's like, and as a triathlete, you have to become an efficient swimmer just to save your race. It's all about technique in the water. It's not about speed. It's not about power. It's not about anything other than technique and being efficient.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, it translates on the bike as well. You have to learn how to mesh the cardiovascular effort and the power together in order to be an efficient cyclist. I said this to someone just recently. I've been to camps and going down the road with people who all want to be Lance Armstrong. They all want to spin their feet at 100 RPMs, and they're spinning their feet, and they're because they're using all that energy to spin their feet. They're not being very economical at all, and they're not going anywhere. And I'm going by at 88 RPM and just cruising right by them, and I'm thinking, you really need to up the power a little bit. They don't understand that spin in the feet doesn't get you anywhere, but it gets the heart rate up because it's an energy expenditure as well. So you have to learn that balance between energy output and power output, and where the two of them meet, that you become most efficient. And that's a feel thing. It's great to have the power meter, but again, it's a feel thing. You and I said this to someone, and we were probably involved in the conversation. If you take the power up a little bit, the heart rate goes up a little bit sometimes, but it only stays up a little bit for a second until, bikes are wheels. And we created the wheel for a reason, to make life easier. So once the wheels all start working with the body, it gets easier. So if your heart rate elevates a little bit when you take the power up, there's a pretty good chance it's going to settle once the momentum of the wheels take over. And again, you get back into the economical use of oxygen, and that's the most important thing.
Yep. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here.
Yeah, and we have another phone call after this, don't we?
Yeah, we meet. I'll just let you all know that we meet with our team. Every other week we do a video chat with our team Patagonia, and it's fun because we're not all in the same place, and so it's our one time to get together and see face to face until we meet at the end of March up in Grand Canyon, which I am so looking forward to running with the guys.
That's going to be great. Plus, we have a bunch of other people coming out to the Grand Canyon to run with us as well. So and the documentary crew is going to be there. That's the first time we're going to have the documentary crew there. I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk about that as that gets closer. So, look, if you guys have any questions, you can send an email to Sherry Ann, coach@prsfit.com, and she'll be more than happy to answer those. Because now she's the boss, so she gets to do that. I'm sure you can always email me at prsfit@gmail.com as well. The website is prsfit.com. Lots of exciting stuff happening on the horizon for us that we'll pass on to you. Sherry Ann, it is always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in a little bit. And everyone else, as always, be healthy. Wait, let's see if you can get it. Be healthy.
Train smart.
And have fun. There you go. We'll talk to you all next week, and have a great night.
Good night.